This video goes over the project components functionality within Project Lifecycle Pro. So we're in the demo environment for Big Dog Roofing, and we've logged in as Becky Akita, who is the business analyst assigned to the Dollars project. And Becky has been doing work on gathering some requirements. The Dollars project will be upgrading Big Dog's current financial system from the desktop version of Dollars to the cloud version. Now that Becky has some basic requirements gathered, she's ready to meet with IT to discuss project components. So in Project Lifecycle Pro, a project component is a deliverable that needs to be built. In an IT project, that would be things like interfaces, reports, workflows, user screens, etc. Project components are key to planning the project. You can use labor standards for specific project component types to develop a project labor estimate. Requirements are grouped by project component, and then components are grouped into releases. If you have labor estimates per component, now you'll have labor estimates by release, so you can plan a release date based on the size of your team, or determine the size of the team required to hit a fixed release date. So we're in the Dollars project, and Becky goes to the Related List tab, scrolls down, and here are the requirements she's gathered so far. Right above it is the section for project components. Project components are going to be driven by requirements. So Becky goes down to her first requirement, which is change third-party financing account. And she's going to review that requirement with the IT architect, or perhaps an expert on the Dollars Cloud version software. In either case, they will work with Becky to determine what components need to be modified or created to address the requirements. Let's create a component that will address the change to the third-party financing. We go to Project Components, click New, and we're going to call this Enhancement. The component name is going to be Accounts Receivable Ledger. Description is configuration changes to AR ledger. The build type is going to be a modification versus new. The system is going to be the new Dollars Cloud system. We're going to skip the tool because we're not going to use this external third-party tool. The release knows there's two releases planned for the project at the moment. First is related to the general ledger, so she's going to place it in that release. The quantity, she's actually told there's going to be two ledgers and a subledger that need to be modified, so she's going to put 2 here for now. Later in the project, you could specify the exact ledgers for estimating purposes, so she's going to put 2 here for now. I'm going to say this is high complexity. And now we get down to the labor estimates. So the complexity is a relative ranking tied to the labor standards. So we have labor standards for enhancements of either high, medium, or low complexity. Now Becky has the option to either use the standard labor estimate or to estimate manually. Standard labor estimates are based on a table which you maintain as your company standards. The labor estimate object has a record for each component/complexity combination and an associated labor estimate for the analysis, the design, the build, and the testing of the component. You can customize the labor standards by adding new component types or labor categories. Becky is going to use the standard labor estimates as a first cut. She can then overwrite those estimates manually once they are generated. So to generate the standard labor estimates, we save the component. Now we open it and we'll see the standard labor estimates. 32 hours for analysis, 32 hours for design, 80 for build, and 32 for testing. Now Becky and the architect both think these estimates are a little high. So for right now, she's going to change the complexity to medium. And again, she's going to save. And basically the medium standard is cutting those labor estimates in half. Now, Becky and the architect believe the analysis estimate is correct, but the design estimate is probably a little bit too high given that we're just modifying an existing object. So we're going to go ahead and change that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to uncheck the use the standard labor estimates. This is so that the manual changes that we save will not be overwritten by the standards. Next, we're going to change the design estimate to 8 hours, and we're going to save. Now we have our finalized labor estimates. Let's go back to our list of requirements. Let's work on the components for this mobile access to project costs. Becky and the architect believe we're actually going to need 2 components for this one requirement. First is we're going to need an enhancement. That's because, let's say, Dollar's cloud system, the vendor Dollars hasn't actually migrated their existing mobile app over to the cloud yet. So Big Dog is going to have to build a temporary mobile app to meet this requirement. So we're going to create a new component. We're going to say it's an enhancement. We're going to call it mobile app. Description is temporary mobile app until Dollars has a mobile solution for field reporting. Build type, this case, is going to be new. The system, say, is Dollars Cloud. The release, Becky knows there's a second release plan, which is specifically for interfaces and reporting. We're going to associate the component to that. Quantity is going to be 1 app. Complexity, field's going to be about medium complexity. And again, we're going to use standard labor estimates as a first pass. Save this. Open it. And there's our initial estimate. So now the architect doesn't believe that the mobile app can be built in 24 hours or 3 days. So again, we're going to do a manual adjustment. Check that so it doesn't overwrite our changes. And we're going to change this to 40 hours. Also, the analysis is probably a little light. We're going to change that to 16 hours, 2 days. And we're going to... Now, the second component we need for the supervisors to see the information needed in the field is going to be an actual report that is displayed on the mobile app. We're going to call this the mobile job cost report. Describe it as provide job supervisors current costs against job budget. Build type is going to be, this is going to be new. Systems, we're going to say Dollars Cloud. Tool, I'm not going to specify report trigger. Let's say that that is done ad hoc as the supervisor requests it. Source is going to be the project cost ledger. And the release, again, is going to be this interface and reporting release. Let's say they think there's actually going to be 2 reports, slightly different filters. So we'll do that. The complexity is fairly low. We'll use the standard estimates again. And there we go. We have an hour for each report for analysis, design, build, and testing. That's probably a reasonable estimate. And so we're done. So now that Becky has these components defined with IT's help, she has some labor estimates against them and they're associated to releases. And also, now that the components are defined, go into the individual requirements and associate the requirements to the components. So she's going to associate that one to the mobile app. Now, from a planning purpose, she can now go into reporting, and since this information is all in a database, she can report against that information any way she wants. So let's go to reporting, and there is a standard report in Project Lifecycle Pro called the Project Release Labor Estimates Report. Now, Becky or the project manager on this report can open that report. So now they can see the components for the release with the associated labor estimates and the total for the release. The analysis work is typically done by the business analyst, so it would represent the business analyst labor. The design is typically done by an architect or IT lead, the build by developers, and the testing by either the business analyst or QA group. So there are now labor estimates by role. Look at the subtotals by release. Now the project manager can start putting together some staffing needs and a timeline. If the team size is fixed, the project manager can now estimate how long each stage will take based on the available labor. If the release date is fixed, the project manager can now estimate how many team members by role are needed to hit the date. So if we look at the accounts receivable ledger, analysis estimate is 2 days. So I have one business analyst working on that for 2 days and 8 hours for design, etc. Build estimate, I need one developer, 5 days. But look at the second release where I have 2 components, the total there. I've got 10 hours of analysis, 10 hours of design, 26 hours of build, 10 hours of testing. Now I can start getting my overall project timeline and staffing planned. Of course, for normal size project, we're going to have many more components, dozens of components summing up this labor. And as I move components between releases, obviously these subtotals automatically update. So that is project components and how they fit into the software development lifecycle and within the tool, Project Lifecycle Project tool.